Yo, what's up, everybody? Hope y'all are doing well out there. This is episode, what are we on, 32, and we have our Virginia Bureau Chief and resident Don DeLeo expert, BLA, joining us. Welcome back.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
Oh,
What's
I'm
up,
doing all
Virginia
right.
Bureau Chief? That's something. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I didn't expect that one. All right.
Yeah, it's, you know, keep us apprised of what's happening up there and
Right.
further up the East Coast.
Yeah. So, what's up, everybody? It's been a wild week. It's been a slow week, but fast week. I guess there's always stuff happening.
Are you still on spring break?
Yeah, I still got 2 more weeks.
Oh, you got 3, or do you get 3 or 4 weeks spring break?
3 weeks. 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
Nice.
I've just been planning. I mean, I'm not the one to plan it, but apparently I'm the one planning it, I guess. But it's a boys weekend, fellas weekend in DC. I don't know what it's going to be, but I found my idea of a great hotel. Think of a famous hotel, and I'm not doxing myself because I don't know when we're going to go, and I don't know what it is. But think of if you were going to go to DC and stay in a notorious hotel. Can you think of a hotel like from the 70s where something happened?
I'm racking my brain. I can't come up with anything.
Well, the Watergate Hotel is still a hotel.
Yeah.
So that's where I want to stay. That's what
you should do it. Is it expensive to stay there?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but luckily I have very, very Pat Bateman wealthy friends who are gonna reserve the whole thing. So, yeah. But the object is, you gotta meet up, and these are my best friends. My best friends for my whole life. So, but everybody's I just hit the mic. Stop moving. Shit. Sorry. So they've been my best friends for my whole life, but everybody lives, in different places now. So we got to get together and have a fellas weekend outside of our normal hood.
Yeah.
Which is pretty far for some people, but luckily they make bank, bro. So
nice.
But I've always wanted to stay there. So we'll see. We'll see when it happens. I'll let everybody know after it happens. I'm not going to let anybody know beforehand. Shit. But
it reminds me of that line in The Sound of Music where that guy says something to the captain. He says something like, "I like rich people. I like how I live when I'm with them," or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody in the chat is asking what happened with the Spring Breakers analysis. Is that still up?
Yeah, I put it on the members. I left it up for about a week, and then I put it on members chat. So if you want to see that, grab a membership, and you can still see that. That's up there. That was fun.
Yeah, that was a good one. I think that's the shortest stream we've done. Was that
I know.
one?
Yeah. Here's Jamie. Jamie and I are going to do a couple of streams on. Well, I'll let you know when they come up. But we got some good topics that we're going to work on. And then I'm supposed to be on. I might be doing Jim Bob on Friday for one of his panels. We'll see. How it goes. But so you can look for me on that. And then for me, shameless self-promotion here, Tom. I'm going to be doing Faust this week. I've kind of put it off for a week just to get some distance from it. But Faust, and then I got Faust Part 2, second half of the poem the other day. And I'm going to be tying that in with Arthur Schnitzler's Traum Novelle, which is the inspiration
Eyes Wide Shut?
Yeah, that's Eyes Wide Shut. So I'm rereading it right now. It's the second time I've read it, but it's interesting reading it back. How close, it's the inspiration for Eyes Wide Shut, but it's pretty close to the movie. It's set in fin de siècle, Vienna, turn of the century, 19th and 20th century Vienna, but it's essentially the same thing. So now it's not.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you say it. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, was it Goethe that wrote Faust?
Yeah, it's Goethe. Yeah, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. And Faust is interesting because let me get my shit straight here. I had it all moved for TNT. Faust is interesting because it's not what people normally think it is. Like there are a lot of people have a general idea of Faust. Makes a deal, but he doesn't make a deal. He doesn't make a deal. It's a bet. which is interesting. And also, Faust does not go to hell at the end of Faust, which is interesting because in Dr. Faustus, Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, he gets dragged into hell by Mephistopheles. Mephistopheles, but that's not the way it is. And also interesting is that in the introduction, it says that Goethe claimed that he'd never seen Dr. Faustus by Marlowe. Bullshit. Like there's so much language even though it's German. I mean, the German is on one side and you can read it and it's the same language. A lot of it is the same. This is the same thing with Shakespeare is that this isn't like schizo encoding, but it's just like there are unique words that are used by certain writers, and they're not words that are in the arsenal of other writers who are writing the same story. And then some writers have the same unique words. I mean, like for instance, the word headlong, in it's just one word. But in Dr. Faustus, he says, then I'll headlong run into the earth gape. And I think that, and he does that in Goethe, and it either seeped through into his consciousness through osmosis, through the language barrier, or he just saw the play and then claimed he didn't. But whatever it is, it's really interesting. I mean, there are specific, witch rituals in it. Walpurgisnacht is one of the big rituals in the poem, in Goethe's poem, and Mephistopheles takes Faust to Walpurgisnacht on this mountain, where it's supposed to be actually in Germany. And then also when he's coming, like when he comes in to see him, Faust doesn't, Faust, like he has to invite him in, basically. Like he has to want him. He doesn't come in to tempt him. He invites him in, which is what we would kind of think it would be. But Mel says a bet is a type of deal. Well, it is, but it isn't, because essentially Dr. Faustus in Marlowe, I don't want to go too deep into this, but Dr. Faustus sells his soul. He makes a deal for wisdom, right? He wants to know everything. He's an academic, but he doesn't do that in Faust. He like kind of already knows all this stuff, but he wants to know everything in terms of like sensory detail. He wants to feel like what it's like to be a god, which is different from Dr. Faustus's MO. And the bet is that if he can, it is a type of deal. Yeah. In the sense that, if he can prove that he, can show him and he can experience things that he never would have experienced, then he will, then his soul is his. But he tempts him with some creeper things in the thing, and he falls in love with this girl, and then she unalives herself, and then he feels regret for it, and then he goes to Walpurgisnacht. But it's different. My point is that it's not what we typically think of when we think of it's probably more true, actually. But that also speaks to Faust's hubris, right? That he thinks that, nobody can show him anything, even Mephistopheles. So it's interesting. It's an interesting, and I'm going to tie it in with Traum novel, which is interesting because Traum means dream in German, but it's trauma. It's kind of a traumatic dream, which is also sort of initiation. There's an initiation that goes on in the book and in the movie Eyes Wide Shut. So it's interesting. Anyway, that's what I'll be covering this week.
So I never looked at the. What's up?
Circle G says, "Yeah, everything I know from Faust, I learned from Tombstone." That's a good point. But what about you, Johnny Ringo? I already did it. That's what he says. Look, darling, there's a soul for sale. Right? They do Faust as one of the plays. That's the one that the girl plays. What's her name? Dana Delaney. Dana Delaney, totally insane. That actress. And it's right after Henry V. Everything I learned from Henry V, I learned from Tombstone because 1993. The monologue from Henry V: to die, if not to live. Right. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I just watched Tombstone. Like 3 or 4 weeks ago. Such a good movie. One of my favorites. One of my favorite westerns for sure. So I didn't realize. I guess I never looked at the dates when these were written. For some reason I was thinking Faust was written before Dr. Faustus, so I didn't realize Dr. Faustus came first.
It did, yeah. Dr. Faustus is Marlowe, and he died in like what 1593, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was killed in a tavern brawl, stabbed in the eye. But of course, he was probably a secret agent, and he was assassinated by one of the agents of Francis Walsingham. But Faust by Goethe is an Enlightenment poem, so it's
okay,
late 1700s. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't.
I know
it does make later.
It does make sense. We kind of think of Goethe as a medieval poet, but he's not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking he was like way before. I didn't realize he was Enlightenment. So that's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, looking forward to those. And you're doing those this week?
Yes, probably tomorrow night.
Okay.
We'll see. I got a lot of time. I've just been watching movies and reading all week. You want to see my book haul? This is what booktubers do.
Yes,
so
yeah.
Let's see my
book haul.
Let's see my book haul. Okay, well, so I first read this November 2020 during the Karanka. So I'm rereading. That's Traum novel. That's Schnitzler, Arthur Schnitzler. This is my Goethe Part 2. This is Goethe Part 1 right here. The other day, this is what Jamie and I might do. I got the Stargate Conspiracy, the truth about extraterrestrial life and the mysteries of ancient Egypt classic book. I got this at the used
that cover goes hard.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool cover, isn't it?
That's so
pretty
cool.
sweet. And I was thinking, okay, when I saw it, I recognized the book, and I was thinking, okay, am I gonna, is this gonna be an alien book? Is this gonna be a bunch of bullshit? But it is Stargate, and then the page that I opened to was talking about DARPA and MK Ultra, so I thought, okay, I'll get this.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can't pass that up.
I got Ian G.R. Shaw's Predator Empire Drone Warfare and Full Spectrum Dominance.
Nice.
My dad just sent me this book, which I think you would like, but I haven't read it yet. Shea Fidel and the Improbable Revolution, Cuba Libre.
Oh, I've heard that book's really, really good, but I haven't read that one yet.
And we got a bunch more over there. And then one of the books Jamie was talking about the other night, which is she's doing a stream soon, and on the Disney film, but it's based on the book, Lloyd Alexander's Black Cauldron.
Oh,
which is Lloyd Alexander. I covered the first one of his books, which is this is the Chronicles of Prydain, and there's 5 parts to the book. There's the book. I covered the book of 3, and so the High King. It's a 5-part book that sort of mirrors C.S. Lewis, but it's interesting because it was published. I think it was published the same year as Dune, which is crazy. And it's supposed to be kind of an American. It's not set in America, but it's a mythical, version of sort of C.S. Lewis's books, and it sort of mirrors C.S. Lewis. And there's kind of a trifecta. There's C.S. Lewis, there's Tolkien, and then there's Lloyd Alexander. And I've always preferred Lloyd Alexander because he's the least well known of the 3. And I read it when I was little. I was obsessed with those books when I was little. And I also really want to get. I really want to, of course, the Black Cauldron mirrors Macbeth. It's taken from Macbeth, but I really want to get this book Sam was talking about called Whist. Did you hear that stream the other day? It's by this guy. No. What's the guy's name?
I saw the clip you posted from it, but I haven't listened to the full thing yet.
It's so good. I will not do 3 hours of burden for 1 wicket. Right. It's this guy. What's this guy's name? It was on Dollar Stream. If you guys don't follow Dollar Stream, you got to follow Dollar Stream. It's a good clips channel. This was what's this guy's name? Damn, now I'm not gonna find it. Shit. Okay, well, I'm not gonna find it right now. What's this fucking guy's name, man? Oh my god, it's so good. He wrote this book, Whist. Okay, give me a second. I gotta find it now.
Okay. So yeah, that's going to be it's going to be good. Looking forward to. I just started on a book that we're going to be having a special guest on. Not going to reveal who it is. It's a long book. It's like 600 something pages, but whose title actually, I mentioned Don DeLeo earlier, whose title of the book actually comes from a line in the Don DeLeo book. So we got that one. This one's a page turner. So even though it's like 600 something pages, we got that one coming. I don't know when that one's going to be. Sometime soon. Mikhail from Technoir Graphics. Shout out Mikhail. He'll be back on soon. We're going to be doing our long-awaited or our long-promised metal stream. So that one should be fun. And then I got the short book. I can't reach it from where I'm sitting, but it's about. I think it's about like paganism. The title just kind of jumped out at me. I found it when I was looking for something else online, and I was like, all right, because history is like when I started this channel, I was like, oh, like we'll do history, and then I've done like relatively little history, so gonna be digging into that some more. So there's a lot of exciting things coming up.
Sweet, that's good. Yes, shouts out to Alan. It's Jack Vance. Yeah, Jack Vance.
Jack Vance. Yeah, I've heard that.
You heard of him?
Yeah.
You know him? I didn't know him at all. I mean, again, like I mentioned this recently. What's up, Ursh? There. Is Ursh? Are you Mersh? No. No. I always avoided sci-fi and fantasy books when I was little. I mean, I read Lloyd Alexander, and I avoided them, but I still read all C.S. Lewis, and I read all of Lloyd Alexander. But I didn't read like high fantasy besides that, and especially not sci-fi. Which is interesting that I kind of am into it a little bit more as I'm older. And then and I learned that somebody just sent me this. One of my friends, one of my classmates, and my friends, he's actually the friend who, his name is John Teschner, and he he just published 2 books with a Macmillan subsidiary on Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
He's my age. Anyway, he's the friend. I remember playing with him in first grade. I went over to his house to play after school, and he introduced me to mythology. I remember because he didn't introduce me to it. I was into mythology, but he said, I saw a mythology book there, and he said, "Yeah, this is mythology." And he took out the book, and I remember looking at pages of like Apollo, Artemis, and then talking about who's your favorite Greek god, right? Like you do in your first grade. My favorite is Poseidon, right? Because he can swim, right?
Just normal 6 and 7-year-old behavior.
Yeah, well, this guy, he's it's interesting reading his biography. I haven't spoken to him in years, but we were friends since we were little, and he was when I was in school, I was in AP English, but I didn't take any of the AP science or math classes. I'm a total retard when it comes to those things, but he was one of the guys that was in all AP. Just very, very smart, and I forget where he went. He went to Columbia or Harvard or somewhere, and I think he's a professor now in Minnesota, but he was in the Peace Corps, and he like biked across America. I was like, wow, it's pretty cool, interesting life. And then I realized, I've had not a bad life. I walked across England, I walked across Liechtenstein, I've done similar things. I wasn't in the Peace Corps, but I went to Honduras. But anyway, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, so I'm going to read those books as well. Shouts out to him. But the overview of this book, Whist. Has anybody read this? Anybody read this book? I really want to read it because Sam was talking about it, and he makes it sound great. It's like terminal communism. The people don't have to work, and they have to do this thing. He called it burden, but I think it's called drudge. And that's when they're like, I won't do. You have to do jobs that they put you in, right? So it's like I'm in the factory making Bigsy Bees today for burden for 1 wicket. But listen to this. The Kanatic rules the 3,000 inhabited planets of the Alistor cluster from his palace Lutz on the world Numenes. Though its military force can bring considerable might to bear where necessary, the Kanatic often wanders among his subjects incognito, intervening to right a wrong or leaving well enough alone. For a century, the people of Erebus on the planet Whist have lived by the egoistic and manifold in a society which minimizes toil but guarantees adequate food and shelter for all. They have to do 13 hours of drudge per week, experiencing the frivolity that otherwise characterizes Erebus existence, but discovers a conspiracy to control the wealth of Erebus and threaten the life of the Kanatic himself. It sounds pretty cool, right? I love Amazon reviews.
That's like the only reviews I read is Amazon book reviews, and I'll read like 2
Yeah.
or 3.
Yeah.
And it's usually just because, like, if I'm going to buy a book, it's something I'm already going to buy to begin with. But sometimes, like, let's just see what people are saying. And sometimes Goodreads, I read like Goodreads reviews every now and then. But most of those people are annoying on there. But yeah, that's I've heard of Jack Vance. I just never heard of that book. I don't think so. I'm gonna have to look that one up.
I hadn't heard of him, so I'm gonna check it out though. But I got a lot of reading to do, and then I watched a bunch of movies this week. You know what I just watched this morning? Have you seen John Q?
Yes, Denzel, great movie.
So good, dude. It was directed by Nick Cassavetes, which Jethro was just talking to me about Cassavetes the other day. There's a bunch of Cassavetes. There's John. I think John is the one who's in Rosemary's Baby. Then there's Nick. Nick has a bit part in The Hangover 2, but he directs this movie.
He also directed The Notebook.
Did he?
Yeah, I think he either wrote it or directed. I'm pretty sure he directed The Notebook.
Wow.
He was also in. Have you seen that movie he did with? Was it Charlie Sheen, The Wraith? It was like an '80s kind of.
That movie rules. Yes, yes, he was the bad guy in that movie.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh shit. Good catch, dude. That movie rocked, bro.
I mean, John Cassavetes was great, but I think his son Nick is actually I don't like to compare people like that, but I don't know. I like what John Cassavetes did, but I think Nick's a great actor. He's a great director. He's one of those where it's pretty clear where it's like, oh yeah, this guy, he's not just like a nepotism case.
Yeah.
Like this guy is actually very good at what he does.
Okay, he was in. Yeah, he was. I forgot he was in Face Off.
Oh, yes, he was.
He's one of the main henchmen in Face Off.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy though. The Wraith, dude. That has Ron Howard's brother in it. They're like, man, you gotta race this kid. He's new. This kid's new in town. Fuck this kid, man. Listen, man, don't mess with me. Right? It's one of those 50s, 80s movies.
Yes.
Right. Which is weird that there was there's a lot of 50s. I remember in the 80s when like spats were popular again. Like, and I remember telling my mom, like, I really want some spats. And my mom was like, no. And I was like, God, give me some spats, Mom. No, I didn't do that. But I remember being obsessed with spats. I thought they were so cool. That was like first grade as well. I was probably wearing spats over to this guy's house to talk about mythology. What a weird kid. But that movie rocks, dude. I first saw that movie. The time I remember seeing it most was when I lived in Belfast for grad school in 2005, 2006. And I remember because I had a television in the room that my friend gave me, and like, you know, oh, you got a license for that TV, right? You got a license for that telly. I remember somebody telling me you can't watch it without a license. And I was like, the fuck are you talking about? The television. And there were 4 channels, right? There's 3 BBCs and then channel 4. And then on Saturday nights, they would always have they would have movie night. And I remember The Wraith coming on. It came on all the time. And I was like, damn, this movie's so cool, dude. It's vaporwave as fuck.
Oh yeah.
So cool. Yeah, it's a great movie.
One of the funniest scenes is the one where Randy Quaid, he's like drinking coffee and he takes a sugar container and it's just like pouring and pouring and pouring. It's like it should have overflowed. He's like sitting there the whole time. He's talking, pouring sugar. And like that's one of those little things of where like it's just a simple thing, but I don't know. It's like that, which I mean, Randy Quaid, the guy's either a total kook or is like really tuned in and knows what's going on. But he was a great actor. Like I know he's kind of gone a little, you know, his career is kind of not what it used to be, but no, he was very good at what he did.
He was an Oscar nominee for the Jack Nicholson movie, The Last Detail. I always thought his Oscar nomination was for the Giorgio Moroder Oliver Stone movie. What's the song? The song Giorgio Moroder did, The Chase. It's like the song that invented Italo disco and synthwave. What's that movie called? The one where he gets arrested in Turkey. What's that movie for?
This is a Randy Quaid movie?
Yeah, Randy Quaid's in it. Oliver Stone wrote it. It's like 1979.
Midnight Express?
Movie? Midnight Express. Thank you. Gosh.
Yeah.
Randy Quaid's in that. He's very good.
Okay, I've heard of that one. I've never seen it.
That's a tough movie to watch, but it's very good. It's
Mhm.
one of those broke down palace. A guy gets arrested in a horrible country, and is there forever. It's one of those movies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it seems
Mm.
pretty. And most prison movies tend to be pretty gnarly. I can't really think of any that aren't.
Face Off.
Yep,
That's got to be
Face
prison.
Off, Brawl in Cell Block 99. Um, what was that one?
The
with
best
Paul
one of all
Newman?
time. Yeah, the best one of all time is Escape from Alcatraz. Clint
Oh,
Eastwood.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That movie rocks. That's a great movie.
I hadn't seen that one in ages.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's better than Birdman of Alcatraz with what's that fucking guy's name? That old guy.
Is that a real
God,
movie?
yeah, Birdman of Alcatraz. It's like got the same character. Yeah. Yo, put some respect on my name, man. I'm Birdman of Alcatraz, but it's played by that dude in what's that guy's name? God, I'm not good with the name. Say Burt Lancaster. I've always thought Burt Lancaster was funny because, like, I just think his name is funny.
Yeah.
Right? But Burt Lancaster, it's like, okay, well, this guy's a movie star. He's in everything. He's in From Here to Eternity.
Mhm.
Yeah, Birdman of Alcatraz is John Frankenheimer who did Ronin.
Oh, okay. I'd never heard of that one.
He's in that movie, this like Swimming Pool. They remade it. There's a French version of the movie Swimming Pool that's really good.
Mhm.
That one is like a dude. He like plays a dude who like swims a mile in the ocean, but it's through people's pools in their backyard in Hollywood.
Oh, that's interesting.
He's like, hi, I'm Burt Lancaster. I'm here to swim. And they're like, would you like a cocktail? And he's like, you got cigarettes in that sandwich? And they're like, yeah, of course. What are you, a Mary? And he's like, good. I'm gonna swim.
Is that a Family
No
Guy
ladies allowed.
scene?
Yeah, no ladies allowed in the pool. Where's your suit? And by suit, I mean full toe to head suit. Right? No skin showing. You can't breathe when you get into the pool. Yeah,
Did you ever see Circle G mentioned Shot Caller? Did you ever see Shot Caller? With the I can't pronounce the guy's name.
Viggo Mortensen. No. It's the other guy. It's the Romanian guy.
It's like Nikolai
Waster Bailu or some shit. Yeah, the guy from Game of Thrones. I saw that. That's
and then
not
John
bad.
Bernthal and Jeffrey Donovan were in it. That's that's one of my favorites. I've seen that movie like 15 times probably. It's a great one.
That one's not bad. Yeah. I watched The Sand Pebbles last week. Have you seen that one? It's an overlooked movie. It's very good. It's got the dude from Rambo who plays the Colonel. But it's Steve McQueen's one of his big movies. And apparently it's the movie that Steve McQueen it hit him hard playing in this movie, and then he took off acting for 2 years afterwards. It's basically a group of American Navy men who go over there on a boat to China during Chiang Kai-shek, pre-World War II. And they got they're holding this, bay or some shit. And like, there's a lady. Oh, it's Candice Bergen. Candice Bergen is an American, not missionary, but she's like teaching in a school over there. And then there's this rich guy and he's financing the thing. And anyway, the war is breaking out. And then it's got Mako, he was Oscar nominated for it. He's remember Mako, Mako. He's a one named actor, Japanese. You'd recognize him if you saw him. He's in everything. And he plays a guy who's Chinese, and he's working on the boat, and then he has to fight this big guy who's Steve McQueen has to fight for him, and they're gonna kick him off. Dirty, get off of here, Chinese man. And he's like, and Steve McQueen's like, you need to fight for yourself, buddy. And then they fight, and then he wins the fight. And then, anyway, it's a pretty epic movie. And then the Chinese go to war, and then they take the Chinese guy off the ship, and they kill him. Like a crowd of people kill him, right? In view of the ship, but the ship can't fire on the crowd because if they do that, then it'll start the war. They're trying to provoke them into war. And then, spoiler alert, the end of the movie basically is Steve McQueen, he's like, I have no country anymore, because he doesn't like how the Americans treated the other people. And it came out in like 1965, and it's a sort of proto-Vietnam movie, even though it's pre-World War II. And then he at the end of the famous line at the end of the movie is "What the hell happened?" Because he like sacrifices himself so that people can get away, and then he gets shot in this temple and he dies. And his last line is "What the hell happened?" And it's very good. It's unbelievably good. Because it's they often talk about anti-war movies, but they end up being pro-war movies.
Right.
You're not gonna. It's like with my example is Saving Private Ryan. That's my continuous example, right? Because Spielberg doing an anti-war movie is very interesting because you watch the movie and when it came out, I saw it the day it came out, and I remember there was an old guy outside of the cinema, like sitting there with his head in his hands because I guess he'd been at D-Day, and that is sort of one of the effects of the movie. But the other effect is you're watching it when you're young and you're like, holy shit, this is badass. And they make the Germans look like Mongoloids, right? They all look. The point of the movie is to show that human beings are killing each other in a war, but they not inadvertently make the other side look like otherworldly non-humans. So you're watching the movie and you obviously sympathize with the American side, and that's fine, except for the fact that it's an anti-war movie and you're just showing the movie how you want to go and kill Germans. So it doesn't really work. But this movie is really good. The Sand Pebbles. It's called the Sand Pebbles because the boat is called the San Padre, and so they nickname it the Sand Pebble. But yeah, it's very good because it's one movie where they show that the sides get convoluted so much, and look at it. Like, we financed the Chinese, right? And then we were allies with the Soviets. And then they become our next enemy afterwards, and it switches. The same with the Pact of Steel, same with the Axis powers. Like, Italy was against Germany in the first one, then the second one, they're friends. And the sides just change. They seem to be arbitrary. I mean, people argue whether we fought on the wrong side in World War One. So the point is that he gets involved in the military, and then at the end of the movie, he ends up sacrificing himself. And he's like, "What the hell happened? How did I get to this place where this thing happened? What is happening?" And how the powers that be use people. And Steve McQueen was I think he was he a Marine or was he in the Navy? He died because he got that cancer from emptying out asbestos from like the boiler room of the ship. They made him do that as one of his duties, with no protection. So he ended up merchant marine. So he ended up getting like mesothelioma or whatever from that.
Yeah.
And, that's how he died young. That's what they say. So I believe that. I mean, so he, it's crazy. Steve McQueen's just so, so interesting to watch. He's a great actor.
Oh yeah, really he's one of the best. I watched The Ides of March last night. It's one of my favorites. I hadn't watched that in a while. And it's a what's that?
Is that Ryan Gosling?
Yeah, it was Ryan Gosling, George Clooney, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Paul Giamatti, Evan Rachel Wood. Great cast, and that's an interesting movie because it's for people who haven't seen it, it's worth watching. Like it's really really good. It's well written, well acted. It's based on the play Farragut North. And I mean, Philip Seymour Hoffman and Paul Giamatti in particular were just incredible. And Philip Seymour Hoffman was one of the greatest actors ever, as far as I'm concerned. But it's interesting because, spoiler alert, there is. I'll try not to give too much away for people who haven't seen it, but there's a scene where at the end of the film where there's a certain person who dies. And it's interesting because she's like, sort of young, naive, and experienced. And her dad even mentions at her funeral, like, oh, she was like just a girl trying to find her way in a very tough world. And so really, I mean, it kind of shows that this, for like young, naive, experienced kids, because she's like 20, working on this just very vicious, cutthroat, brutal political campaign, this, Democratic primary, is that like this is no place for people like that, for people, and it shows what politics do to people, because again, spoiler alert, but at the end of the film, the sort of the kind of, I'm going to say, and they're not really antagonists, but I mean, I guess Paul Giamatti's character was to an extent, but Paul Giamatti and Philip Seymour Hoffman's characters, Ryan Gosling's character actually ends up being worse than both of them because they're like kind of, they've been around, they've run a bunch of campaigns. They're just these jaded, cynical, just cutthroat, brutal kind of guys. And Gosling, who's kind of the young idealist, he ends up becoming worse than either of them or both of them. And then it's actually interesting because it hints towards the end of the film where Gosling's basically blackmailing George Clooney's character. He's like, oh, well, did you bring this evidence? And he says, no, that's how people get hurt. Which, I mean, seems to be hinting at, kind of like what people say about the Clintons, right? Is that if you have the wrong kind of information in these sort of political circles, that, you can wind up shooting yourself in the back of the head 3 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very great film. If people haven't seen it, that's really.
Have you seen Primary Colors? It's the movie where John Travolta is playing Clinton.
Oh, no, I've heard about that one. I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very good. I think of that movie. And Michael Clayton. I'm going to cover Michael Clayton soon, by the way, for my friend Block Party, because he wanted me to cover that. That's great George Clooney movie. Great George Clooney movie. Great guy. It's got what's his face who just passed away, who plays a great God. I can't. There's so many names, dude. I can't. The Englishman, Tom Wilkinson. Yeah, he's great in that. He plays like a bipolar scientist or whatever. And then John Q has the famous. I wanted to get this in. John Q has the famous song. I am not going to bury my son. My son is going to bury me. Right? Mm-hmm. I can't do it, Denzel. Listen. And then what else did I watch? Ides of March. Yeah. Early Gosling, he's skinny. He's real skinny in that. He's got a new movie coming out, The Stuntman, which I really want to see. That'll be another meme movie.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. The Gray Man was great. That was his last one. That was before Barbie. The Gray Man was really good. Oh, dude. Oh, shit. You know what I watched last night? Have you seen this yet? Have you seen The Octopus on Netflix? You guys, you got to watch this documentary. You would love it, man. You would love it.
What's it about?
It's a 4-part documentary called The Octopus Conspiracy, about the unaliving of Danny Casolaro,
really?
Journalist. Oh my gosh, it's so good. I put it off. It's kind of old now. It's like a few months old. And I put it off because I was thinking, what are they going to do with this? Right. Mm-hmm. I was worried about watching it because I actually read the guy who made it. This guy, Christian Hansen, is a young guy, and he looks exactly like Danny Casolaro, and he works for Hellgate. Do you know what Hellgate is? It's a website.
I've heard the name.
In New York. But anyway, I read an interview with him and the director, and the interviewer was like, is this movie a warning against sea theories, and how they can take you down rabbit holes? And I liked his response. His response was, what do you mean a warning? You mean how they exist and how conspiracies exist and how you get sucked into them because they're real things? And the guy was like, no. And he was like, no, we didn't want to make a movie and have a bunch of psychologists on here talking about the dangers of getting into sea theories. Like, that's not what it's about. It's about the actual thing. And I thought it was really well. It's about, just briefly, it's, have you guys seen this in the chat? Have you seen Octopus Conspiracy? It's basically Spectre, right? Or the real thing. And it's, he uncovers I wrote down the names. Danny Casolaro is a journalist, and he's covering this thing called Inslaw in the 80s. And Inslaw was a law firm that developed a software called Promise. And Promise was meant for the law firms in DC. And it was supposed to be, it's collative website that allows you to cross-reference people in the country. And then basically someone involved with Justice Department, and something called Hadron Corporation tries to buy it, and they don't want to sell it. And he says at the beginning, the guy says, we have means of making you sell this software. So he sells the software to this dude, and the dude is a functionary or agent, basically, of Reagan. Okay, this guy Earl, whatever his name is, one of these, big time agents who's on the board of all these things. He's an MIC guy. It turns out he's got offshore accounts. He's involved in Iran Contra later on and all this stuff. But Promise is used as a software that then is bought by intelligence, and they sell it to all the other intelligence agencies in the world, and it allows them to spy on everything they're spying on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just proto Google and all that stuff, right? It's like, this is major computer software that allows them to do it. And then this guy, Michael something, gets involved. And this guy's like the shadiest character ever. He's an NS. He works for all the alphabet companies. And he puts what he calls a trap door into it, which is a back door, which allows the alphabet company to spy on all the other things. And then that leads Castellero, who's writing about this, into all, he keeps coming across these names. And they're all these, it involves every conspiracy that you can think of. Iran Contra, guns, money, drugs, cartels, Kali cartel. It just keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually he kind of uncovers, his theory is that he's got 8 names who are kind of on all the boards of the companies, big MIC people who are also intelligence people. And these people are like, it's the shadow government, basically. And the names, I took a screenshot of the names, were Ray Klein, G. Bush, the older one, Richard Helms, Howard Hunt, George Pender, John Nichols, Ted Shackley, and Tom Kleins. And the names are probably a little, he keeps running across Ted Shackley because of Vietnam and Golden Triangle stuff. And then, of course, Howard Hunt, who's an agent. But this guy, John Nichols, is this. It's funny because part of the thing when you're watching it is that the people that are covering this, the journalists that are covering it, they think that everyone's crazy. And they think that they keep running across people like they'll talk to somebody in the FBI and the guy will be like, well, he's a con man. But what they don't understand, and when you're watching it, I'm sure you'll think this, is that all of the people are con men, right? They are all confidence men, but they are telling the truth about this. But it's just that the truth, they can't handle the truth, that there's so much to it. And that the main guy, Michael, that they come across, who is a weapons manufacturer, he was a child prodigy. He hacked the telephone system when he was like 9 years old and got free telephone for everybody. And then his dad was a OSS guy. And then he manufactures LSD and all this stuff. Then the DEA comes after him because he won't play ball for this thing. And then he manufactures night vision. He does weapons testing. They buy a plot on an Indian reservation and then start up a gambling corporation. And then the natives aren't getting any money. And then one of the guys looks into it and finds uranium tipped tank ballistics. And they're selling it to this thing called this weapons manufacturer called Wackenhut. It's called Wackenhut. And then he gets killed along with 2 other guys. And then everybody covered. They all get killed. And then the whole point is that Danny Castellero, they find him in a hotel room in West Virginia. And they say, oh, yeah, he unalived himself. But everybody who was investigating it, was like, hell no. You have to watch it to see why. But it's, and then they unseal the documents from the local law enforcement. And they find that there was a description of the guy he was meeting with. And the description of the guy is a military intelligence guy that he had met at the bar 2 nights ago to suss him out. And then they call his son. And then that guy's like, well, my dad was maybe involved in some sketchy stuff, but I'm not going to say anything. And the guy, it's crazy. It's very well done. But one of the craziest things in this were, thank you, David. Yes. Thank you for correcting me. Yes. Yeah. Were that one of the guys, it's crazy because there's like 3 guys named Austin and 3 guys named Nichols in the thing, and they all look alike. But one of the guys in this who was a go-between between some of the alphabet agencies and some of the other things was in Under Siege. He was in them. There's a scene in Under Siege. Yeah, there's a scene in Under Siege where they show the Situation Room.
Yeah.
And they're kind of this camera. It's very famous. You'd recognize it. The camera zooms in, and they're kind of going along, and they're watching all the guys talk. And one of the guys turns in profile, and he says, "We're going to need to notify the president of this." Anyway, that's the guy.
Wait, that's an actual. He's the actual NYC guy.
He's the actual. He's one of the actual guys.
No way! I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, and when they interview, you should see the interviews with this guy. When they interview him, they say, I mean, this is like the most serious guy. They're like, "So is it true that you worked for, Delta Force?" And he's like, "Let's just say that they gave me a mission and a set of objectives, and I always achieved them." And they're like, "So it's a nice day outside," and he's like, "Yes, it's quite a wonderful day." Like very, very, just a very like, and then Danny Casolaro and this other guy, Michael, this Michael guy who's looks like the evil genius of all time.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "You don't want to get me." He says, "This guy Austin, it's like something Austin Nichols."
Is he related to Larry?
Probably. Oh my God, who's the guy?
That was for Jethro. Shout out to Jethro.
Listen, the first time I saw Hillary, she was stuffing babies into the carcass of a pumpkin. Hillary's a witch. Yeah. This guy. Oh my God, this guy is so crazy. Seymour claims Nichols. Okay. I can't remember the guy's name is Michael Riconosciuto. And then there's this other guy who's I can't remember his name right now. It's not worth it. But anyway, the guy, Michael's business part, as Michael was to computers, this other guy that he knows was to money. And the guy was funneling money to offshore bank accounts. And he was he was investing in MIC stuff. But anyway, he ends up dead in San Francisco, hogtied, like with a wire around his neck to his legs. And so if he relaxes his arms and elbows and his legs, then he'll strangle himself. So he dies. And
that's a gnarly way to go.
Yeah. And Michael says, "I know who it was. It was this guy." And he says, "This is the scariest motherfucker you've ever seen. Don't let me get anywhere near this guy. Please let this guy go." Anyway, this guy turns out was an enforcer he worked for the mob. He worked for the alphabet agencies. And he's like as Phoenix program as they come, like when you see this guy. And he was, I think he was convicted of the R-word murder and kidnapping of some woman in 1971, like recently. But he's the guy that's after them. And it turns out Michael's dad had hired him to look after him, to protect him.
Mm-hmm.
But then he also works for the other group, and he smokes the other guy. But he's one of those 3 named guys. They go, "Oh, here's the 3 named guy." And I went, "Oh no, this guy's got 3 names." They're saying it's all 3 names. You're fucked, right? And you see this guy, and they're like, "Yeah, he had a rap sheet 3 miles long, and it's like kidnapping, like extortion, just everything." And they show a picture of the guy, and you're like, "Oh fuck, get away from this guy." But there's all these sketchy characters in it, and what they end up realizing, which is why everybody should watch this, is that this Michael Riconosciuto guy that they don't trust. There's a guy at the end who's an investigative journalist, and he says this guy's what we call a web spinner. Basically, he says 90% of the truth. Okay, and he cloaks himself in myth that is so heavy. It's so hard to see through the layers of myth that you can't see the 10% that he's hiding. So it's classic limited hangout.
Yeah.
So in other words, the guy is so cloaked in so many things that by the nature of Seaspiracy, they can't ever find the truth. They can't ever penetrate to the actual truth of it, because all of those things are true, but he is diverting them and disinfoing them and at certain stages, because there's layers of myth like 5 miles down the road that he has to protect. Right. So like he spends 30 years in jail, and then he gets out, and when they get out, they pick him up. And this is recently, and the guy's like, "We got to get the fuck out of here. We got to get out of here." And then he skips his hearing in DC, and he goes back to jail. So, cause he's afraid he's going to be smoked when he goes there. Anyway, you guys should watch it. It's very good. Yeah.
Reminds me, when you're talking, I had to pull this book out. I did an analysis of this one a while back. Drug Cartels Do Not Exist. If y'all haven't listened to that one, I thought it was a great one. But it opens with a quote from Gary Webb. I'm sure a lot of people out there listening are familiar with Gary
Yep.
Webb,
Yep.
where he says, "I don't believe in effing C theories. I'm talking about an effing C conspiracy."
Yeah.
Right. And like I think I like that quote because yeah, it's fun to theorize about some of the more wacky kind of stuff about what shape is the earth, or is our cryptids real, that kind of stuff. But I
Mhm.
mean, when it comes down to this kind of stuff, when it comes down to moving drugs from place to place, when it
Mhm.
comes to like the kind of things you're talking about with that documentary, like these
Yeah.
things are very much real. Like it is an actual conspiracy
Yeah.
that people are undertaking. And I think a lot of that, some of the more fun, goofy kind of stuff, and then a lot of the kook kind of stuff that gets thrown in there, as you know, that is to illegitimize everything, like all of like the stuff he talks about in drug cartels do not exist, and the kind of stuff that you're talking about is to and again, like when you hear all these names, all these people are intertwined. Like, wait, this guy was working for the alphabet agencies, and he was working for organized crime, and it's
Yeah.
like I think they intentionally, these things are so convoluted, and that's intentional to be like, this is too crazy to believe. And then when you throw in other kind of crazy things, like, oh, some high level government official is posting things on a certain alphanumeric website, and
Yeah.
we have to, there's a plan we have to trust, this kind of stuff. I mean, it become like it's basically to throw people off of any. So then people are just like, oh, well, all of that is just nonsense. There's kind of that knee jerk reaction where, yeah, everything is like you can't believe any of it because there's also a bunch of kooks just
Yeah.
stringing things together on a bulletin board.
Dude's name was Philip Arthur Thompson. That's the name of the killer. Yeah.
Philip,
Yeah. No,
okay.
you make great. You guys look that up. Philip Arthur Thompson. You can look him up. Yeah. And one of the things that deals with what we were just talking about is this guy Nichols shows another journalist. He brings her in and he says, "I want to show you something." And he shows her a clip of the Zapruder film.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, and he shows her the film, and she says what she saw was the driver turn around and smoke the target. Right.
Hmm.
And she says, "I've never seen this before." And he says, "That's because this is the original version of the film and it's been cropped. This is the version you see." And she says, "How do I know that?" He says, "Well, look at that tree. See how the tree is floating in the midair? That's something nobody ever catches." And I watched that and I went, okay, but what this probably actually is what I've always thought about the thing with the last press, which is that when he tried to remember when he came out and he was like, we're gonna expose everything with us in 1963. We're gonna talk about
Mm-hmm.
all the reject. I think when he did that, when he said that, he was probably shown into a room by some people and they said, "Hey, look," and they showed him that film and they said, "You see this? That's you right there, right? That's you if you want to release these things," which was probably the actual intent. I don't know if there's an original film of the thing. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of irrelevant at this point. It's just that what he's showing her is there are layers of myth and there's layers of things, and this is a thing, and this did happen. No matter what happened, he did get in 1963, the guy did get smoked.
Yeah.
And so this is you, right? He's not saying that, but he's saying this is you. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important. What they kind of come to realize in the film, which is great, is that you know, no matter what, there are the label of theory, right? Is a way to we all know this is a way to immediately discredit the actual thing, which is the first part of the term. And the first part of the term is where there are 18 agencies legitimate that are built on that very thing. That's their
Mm-hmm.
whole thing is stratagems, lies, info, um, you know, murder, arson, all of the various geopolitical stratagems that you get into. And so a part of that, the outer layer of that is discrediting the fact that they're doing those things. So no matter where they go and what they do, it's always cloaked. It's cloak and dagger. It's cloaked in
Yeah.
secrecy. And the people who the people who reveal things are either doing so at the behest of those people. They're never former people. They're always still involved in the thing, right? It's like that's why the mob That's like when I first watched James Files, which isn't even on YouTube anymore, but the guy who was in the Chicago outfit and claimed to be part of the big 1963 thing.
Mm-hmm.
He says, no, it was a triangulated shot. I was up on the bridge and I was the final shot. And who knows whether he's telling the truth or not. But the point is that it shows that the domestic aspect of the 3-letter groups is handled internally domestically by the outfit, because there's omerta built into it. And so it's a natural extension of that. We see that revealed with white papers, look at the Sicilian operation in World War II. Look at how they used Lucky Luciano. And it just continues.
Yeah.
It's you use morality is, they're trained to see national security and their own interests as above, their petty morality. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter about lying or doing any of this stuff to them. It's their own ends. But it also shows you the black budgets, and the amount of money that's going. People always say, follow the money. And it's like, that's kind of a 2000s thing to say.
Yeah.
Because it's not just that. And it's not that, sometimes that's not even it. Because it's all black budget. Right? How can you follow the money? How can you follow the money on something when it's all black budget and that's also cloaked in secrecy? So, anyway, it's an interesting thing to follow. I would recommend anybody reading The Devil's Chessboard about Alan Dulles.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of that and the John Prados book are very good about CIA. Those are two very good. But there's so many of those.
And Jethro makes speaking of all this stuff, he mentions Kate Middleton, which, look, I'm not an expert on the royal family. I don't really follow that too closely, but and that's one of those kinds of things where one of those rare instances where you see a conspiracy theory kind of crossing over into the mainstream.
Yeah.
And to me, that one was stupid because she put out a press release, like, I don't know, a month or two ago, saying like, oh yeah, she'd be out of commission until at least Easter or something like that. And then people are coming out and being like, well, there's no surgery where you have to be out that long. Look, I know somebody who just had to get a major abdominal surgery, and she was out of commission for like a month and a half. So people are like, there's no abdominal surgery that puts you out for that. Maybe it was long. Maybe it was like 2 months. It was a while. And people were saying there's nothing that puts you out for that long, which is just simply not true, right? There are surgeries that can put you out of commission for that long. And so that was one where, it was interesting to me to see how insane people got with that one, how quickly. It was like a common thing to see people saying, oh, William actually unalived her, and now they're just like scrambling to cover. I was like, if you honestly think that he offed his wife and then now they're just scrambling to try to cover that up, it's like you were legitimately insane. Like, you were delusional. And so then she had to come out and be like, oh no, well, actually I have cancer. And it was just interesting to see that, like how rampant that one got. The thing where people are just wildly speculating with no evidence whatsoever, completely ignoring the original post. It's interesting to see when those kinds of, and you used to see more of that kind of, even some of those, like dumb kind of theories, but it more so now to where now it's like you don't really see that. So I was kind of surprised. That was the first one I'd seen kind of crossover into not crossover into the mainstream, but kind of be discussed by people who aren't really into those kinds of theories.
And it's always, with this sense of fun and this sense of like, oh, look at this, here's what's happening, and it's candy, and I think that the photoshops didn't help with that,
that was a little weird.
But that's par for the course for them. And the fact is, there is a lot of dirty work, involved with those people, especially with our father-in-law and the 1997 incident, right, in the tunnel, which I think was probably as a result of exposure of creeper activity that she was talking about, mixed with the Fayed, Dodi El Fayed and all that stuff. I think that was probably the case. I think that was probably MI6 and all that. And then there's I mean, I just talked about Duke of Windsor and the cover up with the murder that occurred in Bahamas.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
the richest man in the world. I mean, there's a lot of that stuff, and that's wartime. That's wartime threads and all that stuff. But you know, it's most likely the C word as a result of the stabbies. I mean, wouldn't that be the case? Wouldn't that
Could
be? I
make
mean, wouldn't that
sense.
be something? It's very unusual for someone healthy and young for that to happen, but stabbies makes sense. And also a diversion from the fact that he just said her father-in-law just said that he has that thing, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, he did
So,
come out and say that around the same
yeah,
time.
yeah. So, but like you said, I think it's and that's sad, but I think it's in light of all the other things that are going on, we don't have to. It's not like, oh, we have to focus on one because the other one isn't important. I'm just saying that there are big time moving events happening, especially with actual warfare, and then the Moscow thing that just happened,
Oh
which we got
yeah,
to be
that
careful
was
about talking about. But
yeah.
but that thing is crazy. I see that as just gladio.
Hmm.
I haven't even followed the details of the thing because after a while we know what the result is going to be, and we know I can already guess the details, and how it mirrored. Real John Connor brought up that what is it, Modern Warfare 2, like it basically followed the same theme of that, and it's like a simulation gone live. It followed the Mumbai thing, which turned out to have Intel fingerprints all over it. It follows all of these. They always follow the same sort of game plan, and even the videos. You watch the videos, and you're like, "What is this?" Right? The firecracker shots going. It's just very odd, but I'm sure it has Gladio type fingerprints going on. They made a statement about that country in the Far East not having anything to do with it at all. Right? The State Department said that while the thing was still going on, we have no evidence that that country has anything to do with it. And it's like,
Which
what?
country is this? I didn't see that one.
The U country.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay,
Yeah.
I imagine
State
that.
Department, made a statement while the thing was burning down that the U country had nothing to do with this at all. Right? And Russia's response, well, our country's response was, what are you talking about? Yeah, Jethro says tenant gone live. Yep.
Well, it's interesting
Yeah.
because I think it was like 2 days before that, I think it was the U.S. Embassy in Moscow was like, oh yeah, by the way, Americans don't go out for like the next few days,
Mm-hmm.
which to me seems pretty. It's like if they weren't directly behind. I mean, that's just weird. They had to have some kind of indication that something was
Yeah.
going to happen because
Well,
you don't
embassies,
just say that and then. Like just randomly, like you're not just unless you're it's some kind of psyop. But to me, I think I've heard a few different theories on who could be behind it. Like, yeah, people, maybe people affiliated with a certain battalion in the U country. Maybe they had something to do with it. Maybe it
and
was like,
Yemen, the thing with Yemen.
yeah, the same with Yemen. Some people one theory I heard was that it was people affiliated with ISIS because Putin had allied with Bashar
Meaning the
al-Assad.
United States. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because he had allied with Bashar al-Assad, which I have to remind people every time this comes up. The only reason you don't have to like these people, I'm not saying they're good people, but what I am saying, the only reason there are still Christians in Syria today is because of those two.
Mm.
Is
Yeah.
because of them beating back ISIS. Which, if
Yeah.
they hadn't done that, like if ISIS had won, then they would have killed. There would be no Christians in Syria anymore.
Yeah. Well,
They would all be gone.
the embassies put out warnings like that because, for one, the embassies are also intelligence. I mean, they're all
Hmm.
alphabet stations. Everybody knows that. Who's watched any movie or read any book knows that they function as the core. They're built around the listening station.
Right.
And and whenever I see those things, I mean, when I lived in Belfast, I used to get constant, emails. Even at the time, it's weird to think there were emails at the time on my AOL account. I guess emails from the embassy. You know, I was a U.S. citizen abroad, and I would get those, or my dad would forward them to me about warnings because you know, even though the troubles was over, the troubles was it was what do you call that? It's a collective noun, I suppose. So the thing that was happening in Northern Ireland was over. It was still decommissioning still hadn't happened yet. That didn't happen till well after the Big Nine. So there was still things going on, and I used to get warnings about that all the time about, you know, be careful about going to this certain place, and you know, because I mean, It's funny how Northern Ireland was the center of what people thought of, especially in Anglo-European terms, like as the center of tourism for many. I mean, for many years, and I was right there in the city, and so I used to get those warnings about things. But after a while, you're just like, nah, whatever, you know. But of course, they put those things out, but heightened risk and all that stuff. Yeah, they have intelligence. I'm going off about that, but oh, my friend sending me a text, right? Yeah, he's sending me about the Watergate thing. Yeah, sweet, dude. I'm looking forward. If I do, I'm gonna let you guys know after we go how it was, because I want to go to DC and go to. I want to go see the walk past the like what Jamie was talking about, right? The big Temple of 33 there, and anyway, we'll walk past all that. I'm sure. Maybe if we make it out. If we make it out at all. It's gonna be a wild
joke, but I'm not I'm gonna leave that alone. But no, that should be interesting. Yeah, I know there's I think Isaac has talked a lot about some of the things in DC with some of the sort of the rituals that people do, and like with the what is the big like pointed
the Washington Monument?
Washington Monument. Yeah. I know there's some weird kind of stuff with that. And so yeah, I've always wanted to go. I've been through DC. I went through on a train once, but I've never stopped in.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude. Oh man. I've been there a million times. I mean, because I'm in Virginia, but I've been there a million times. I mean, I've been to all the museums there, and DC is pretty cool. I mean, it is like walking around, you know, Neo-Rome. The brutalist Fed building and the Washington Monument and the Capitol. One of the guys from our school was a congressman, so we went there to meet with him one time. And there was another guy who was on the Supreme Court that went to my school. We were in like first grade. We went to go meet the Supreme Court justice. My friends were like, "Let's go to the Smithsonian. Can't wait to steal all the rocks." Speaking of which, I found my Philip Seymour Hoffman clip. I'm gonna play this for you. This is why Philip Seymour Hoffman's the best. This is from what's the movie that I covered about L. Ron Hubbard, the Philip P.T. Anderson film, the Master. Yeah,
the Master. Yeah. Is that Joaquin Phoenix?
Yeah. That's him too. There's a scene where he's first meeting Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin Phoenix makes him a cup of moonshine. Philip Seymour Hoffman's like, "Oh God, oh God, oh."
You know, the only movie of his I couldn't watch was In Cold Blood. That movie, I thought that was terrible.
I haven't seen it. I didn't watch it.
It's not. It's
what
not
he
good.
won the Oscar for. Yeah.
Oh, he did win an Oscar for that one. Yeah.
Hello, my name's Truman Capote. I hang out at Studio 54. I'm 4'9" and I write books. That's interesting, Mr. Murderer. Do you mind if I write a book about it?
That's why I couldn't watch the movie, because he played it well, but that character was so annoying, and that was what he did through the whole film.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't watch this. This is so bad.
It is Truman Capote, isn't it? It's not Philip Roth. Is it Philip Roth?
No, it's
who
Truman
the
Capote.
fuck? It's Truman Capote. It's got to be. Hi.
Oh, hi. You mind if I get in the Studio 54? I got a little bow tie here, Mr. Studio. I'm gonna do some disco dancing. Where's the cocaine?
Okay.
That was if you haven't seen it, folks, now you've seen the movie.
That's
you don't
the movie.
need to go waste your 3.5 hours of your life or however long it was.
Oh,
Just
I
that's
hear
all you
that
need right there.
Oh, I hear that somebody did something real bad down there in the jail in Arkansas. I brought these flowers for you. These are my walking petunias. I'm gonna write a book.
That's the whole movie right there.
Yeah.
Now I wanted to. We have about an hour left, and I wanted to. Oh, we. So if y'all have seen, we did our analyses on True Detective.
Oh yeah.
And I know some of y'all were there for those. Those were great. If you haven't watched them, go check. You can catch the first one on BLA's channel. Arctic Syzygy is what that one was called. And then mine was the last one before this one. I think it was the Star-Shaped Wounds. That was the second conclusion we did. And you can hear our thoughts and our kind of our analysis and you know what we took away from the season 4 of True Detective. But so I was the other day, it was a few weeks ago now, I was just kind of checking because I was wondering, I was like, I wonder what the critics said about this season 4, because it could go either way. Because I know Nick Pizzolatto, the guy who created True Detective, did season 1. He said, so even early on, when I was still kind of like, all right, this is pretty good, he was trashing it on Instagram. Was like, this is stupid. I think he actually called the season stupid. And so I was like, that seems a little harsh. But then kind of in retrospect, it's like, well, so there was one, so I was just kind of skimming over on, I'm just going to share the screen here. On Wikipedia, I was just looking at the reception section on here, and so according to Rotten Tomatoes, it has an approval rating of 92% based on 201 reviews. On Metacritic, has a weighted average of 81 out of 100 based on 45 critics, indicating universal acclaim. The NPR, this guy for NPR said that it was the best entry of True Detective since season 1.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding me.
USA Today's Kelly Lawler said that it was, quote, as excellent as and perhaps transcends that striking first season a decade ago.
What? Didn't watch. Yeah, they didn't watch it.
They clearly did not. Yeah, it's like, did they watch like the first 2 episodes? Were like, oh yeah, this is amazing. This is the greatest thing I have ever seen. Now it gets worse because there's one in particular I want to mention. Inku Kang, writing for the New Yorker, considers the season, quote, to be, quote, a feminist revision as a series best known for its macho poetry and ogling eye. Now this. They must have edited this because I don't know if I can find. Oh, here it is. Okay, I just didn't read far enough. And that Lopez, who was the showrunner for the 4th season, quote, transforms True Detective from a lot of mystical mumbling into a show with something to say.
I read that. Yeah, I read that review. Yeah.
Did you read the whole thing?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. It was because we briefly mentioned that. Yeah, that was something to say, which means it has nothing to say.
Yeah.
Right. Which is the opposite of Heart of Darkness, for instance, where the whole point of Marlowe going to see Kurtz is, he says this at the beginning of the novel, go see my Heart of Darkness analysis, people, is he was a man who had something to say. And he does. He has the whole book reads like it's neural linked right into your psyche. But True Detective season 4 is not that. It is not that at all. And this is an example of art and soulful work and even faith being supplanted by ideology. This is the shit of the 21st century. This is the reason that I talked about on Boiler Room. I mean, not Boiler Room, on TNT the other day with Hesher about how the publishing industry is in trouble because there's no work. There's no everything that is made has an ideological bent to it to forward. The purpose is to forward some sort of area of an ideology, and therefore there's no substance, right? There's nothing wide ranging or even specific. It's just mediocrity everywhere. Mediocrity. I declare you mediocrity. Remember in Amadeus? That's it. The 21st century now is, postmodernism is Salieri, right? That's all it is. So
Yeah, and I think that's yeah, very very great points on that, because yeah, I mean we're kind of in a sort of dark period, I guess, of where there are some things. I mean, because we kind of had that sort of second golden age of television. You know, you had like True Detective season 1, you had Boardwalk Empire, you had Longmire, you had Justified, that was coming on the heels of The Sopranos. Like you had
House of
all
Cards
these.
season 1 and 2 were great.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
new
And
new Twin Peaks, Stranger Things season 1.
Deadwood, the
Great
first like
television.
5 seasons of Sons of Anarchy.
Mhm.
There was a really cool thing happening, and now, yeah, we see that this kind of get taken down a different path, because yeah, it's about advancing a certain narrative. And I mean, look, I don't have any kind of issue with the there being women cops in the show. Like Rachel McAdams from season 2, she was
She's
one
great,
of
dude.
and she was great. She was fantastic in
She's
that
so
role, and it
good.
was a realistic role. Like the way she plays, like, okay, I could see this actually being the case, right? It's similar to the character that Emily Blunt played in Sicario, where she's not going down there and whatever. But I don't want to get too deep into that. But what I'm getting at is I think that this is something where you realize that for a lot of TV, for a lot of people, this is just entertainment. Because I think with seasons, I mean, as we've talked about extensively, and we're gonna get more into that with further analyses in the future of True Detective. But I mean, in the first 3 seasons, it's all about the same thing, effectively, and it's not the exact same thing, but it's all these different pieces of this same system, if you will. And I mean, season 1, it's like it was so in your face that I don't know how you could miss. I don't know the guy who created it. I don't know Nick Pizzolatto. I don't know what he knows, but it's seasons 1, 2, and 3. It's clear. It's like the people who wrote this and created this and made this, they know what's going on. Like they know how the world really works. They understand, how business and how all these things work. And so the fact that people are just saying like, oh, all of that was just mystical mumbling, right? Is Matthew McConaughey and his character, and the kind of things he said, that as if he's just sitting there, from in a on some throne, pontificating about nonsense. It's like, no, the things. Anyway, I don't want to go for a whole rant about this, but it's just so frustrating. And maybe not frustrating is not the right word, but it just makes you realize that most people, or a lot of people out there, are just clueless. Or she's just being disingenuous. The writer the person who wrote it is just being disingenuous, and is putting ideology and narrative over actual something artistic. Because seasons 1, 2, and 3, particularly season 1, they were like they were sort of art in a televised format, and so, and yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple different angles to it, but I don't know what do you? I noticed you holding up Nick Pizzolatto's book there.
Yeah. So let me just read you some of the reviews here. Praise for Galveston, because how much they contrast with True Detective season 4, and just even the reviews here. The language of the reviews of the blurbs shows you the difference. This is Praise for Galveston. This is a great novel. It's 2015 is when I read it. When was it published? It was published. Let's see, 2010. Yeah, this is 2010. Says that's before True Detective, and he says, let's see, this is Dennis Lehane. Okay, Dennis Lehane, the writer, says, an often incandescent fever dream of low rent, unbearable beauty. It's an elegy to the broken and the never were's, to those who got themselves lost so that anyone might come looking. Dallas Morning News says, knockout crime noir in a lyrical tough guy voice. I mean, that right there, those two things right there show, and those are blurbs about the book. Those show you the difference between season 4 and the other seasons, because instead of focusing on things like what did he say in Boogie Nights? We used to focus on story. No, it's no, it's not Boogie Nights. It's Big Lebowski. We used Jackie Treehorn. Back in the day, we used to focus on things like story, feeling. Remember? Um, there's a singular voice, and there is a character-driven story where plot becomes secondary, but the plot infuses itself into this strange world. It's not surrealistic, and it's not even 21st century hyperrealism. It's just a sort of mystically infused aura that surrounds some of the terrible crime of that is unique to this country, but also has its echoes in the outer fringes of one thing is military. And so you notice that in season one, Matthew McConaughey is, ex-military. Season 3, Mahershala Ali is an ex-LERP. And we've got this sort of military background, Phoenix-esque sort of aura that infuses itself, makes its way into the story, into something that is religious in nature. And I think all 3 seasons is a dark, inverted religious nature of what becomes a take on the satanic panic, but is real and truthful, right? The things happened, and the things that people said didn't happen happened. And season 4, the only insight into that is where we get one scene where the one cop shows a flashback, and she's back in Iraq, and she sees her friend blown up. That was the only military thing that we got in. And that's not to say it has to be military. But what I'm saying is that everything else becomes extraneous, and it just they focus too much on the surface level strength of these characters, right? There's no actual strength. There's no, real strength in story is like, for instance, John Q, right? It's like, we don't know about this guy. And he takes to the hospital hostage because his son needs a heart transplant, and he's willing to do anything to let his son survive. He's willing to do anything, right? And so the question of right and wrong in that movie gets convoluted, because you wonder, what are we even doing here, right? What are we even doing when we have a system that makes this type of thing the case? And there's a type of virtue involved with the guy who's willing to go to those lengths to protect his son. But we don't get that in season 4, because all of the backstory of the characters is it's surface level. There's no subtext. There's nothing we can latch onto in the truth of what it means to be human. It's all just surface level. It's all goals and ideologies, and it could have been that. They could have made a turn of Volta somewhere as I say in poetry, somewhere in season 4, where they allowed us a deeper way in. Something literature, and especially movies, are strong when we confront something that we couldn't have imagined happening, right? And where we have to make the decision for ourselves in the view of the character. What would we do in this situation? How do we judge? How do we see? How do we see the truth of this? And it doesn't have to be factual. It can be something truthful, that supersedes fact. But they didn't do that. They just fucking screwed it all up, man. They just threw it all away in season 4. So
yeah, and I think that's very good points. Yeah, and I agree with all of that. And I think one thing since you mentioned the flashback of like the when Eve, it flashback to her, and her friend's got like half her head missing.
Yeah.
I think one of the things, and I'm not against flashbacks in films, but one of my criticisms, and again, this is not to get into review territory here, but one of my criticisms of season 4, one of my big criticisms, is they relied too heavily on flashbacks, and which is different than with seasons 1 and 3, where they're moving between different timelines. So that's different from, we're just going to do flashbacks. And one of the things I didn't like is with the flashbacks, it's like they were trying to be mysterious about the character's past, but it still ended up showing too much, because with every other character from seasons 1, 2, and 3, we're just sort of dropped into this world, and we learn bits and pieces about the characters past, sometimes from other characters. And so it's not like there's not really a whole lot of backstory. You just kind of have to pick up on and sort of wonder to yourself, like, what made this person the way he or she is, right? So like Matthew McConaughey's character, like we learn about some of the things he used to do, but then you kind of learn, like, okay, there's a lot of mystery to all of the characters, and it's like, why are they this way? What made them this way? What did they do in life that kind of got them to this point? Because pretty much all of the characters are in all of sort of the main characters in the first 3 seasons are very troubled people. They're people who have a lot of problems. They may have issues with anger, violence, substance abuse, whatever it is. And I think with that's more true to life, because, when you meet somebody, they might tell you things about themselves. Other people might tell you, people mutually might tell you things about them, but we don't like get flashbacks into people's lives. And so obviously it's a television show. It's not real life, but anyway, I think y'all get what I'm saying there.
Chat is really going hard today. I love the chat today. Real John Connor says they also relied too much on flashbangs. Take the room like a man. What did he say earlier? John Connor, what did you say earlier that was good? You said
I've just been kind of watching.
John Connor had a good comment earlier. What was it?
Let me see if I can find it.
Something that's good.
Was it the Arctic Wizardry one?
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah, Arctic Wizardry. Yeah, that was good.
Shout out to the real John Connor.
But yeah, shouts out to chat out there. By the way, you guys, fucking computer, go down. There you go. Sorry. And shouts out to Crystalline out there, cleaning out her garage. Hey, Crystalline, I thought of you the other day because your boy Jason Burmis is now on TNT. He followed me the other day on TNT Radio, and I thought that was really cool. There's some other stuff coming up that I can't say yet, but it was cool to see Jason Burmis follow my spot on TNT. That was cool. But I thought of Crystalline because I thought of the good old days when I turn on Burmis on the YouTubes and I'd see Crystalline in the chat there talking to him. So that was pretty cool.
Good time.
But yeah, man. I mean, yeah. Hey, Dr. Lecter, listen, did you see that meeting in that movie Elysium with Matt Damon? I was in Elysium. Did you know that? I was the Hillary Crimeton character in that, Dr. Lecter. I was up there on the floating pentagram star world floating above the earth in Elysium. Yeah. Matt Damon wanted to get up there with his body mods and save all the people so they could get off Hell World in LA. And they sent out an MK Delta, that South African fella. Did you see that, Dr. Lecter? Did you see that? I was in Elysium. You saw that movie?
Some of the feedback I got on our True Detective analysis is that there weren't enough Dr. Lecters in there. It's like, okay, well, there's plenty more to come. Don't worry.
No, but you're right. I mean, you made good, serious points about the flashback because, with film, flashback and voiceover are two of the easy things. They're cop-outs usually for movies. And you oftentimes, you need, like Amadeus, for instance, you have a third party who ends up being a first party telling it's a flash forward, but it's his retrospective on life because it functions well in that movie because we, of course, are also in the future and we're looking back on the life of Mozart, but it's through the eyes of Salieri, who is really the main character in the story. So it works. True Detective 1, of course, we have a series of timelines because it's showing that there are circles within circles that matches the spiral imagery in the thing. I fucking hate that. Even that word anymore. But it works because it shows how it poisons even the life of the people trying to figure it out. They go into the present, which is the future in the show, but it goes into the present. In the third, we get flashbacks because Mahershala Ali's character, the Lerp, is suffering from dementia, and he doesn't know he doesn't know the timeline. He doesn't know where he is. He's partly broken by what he's found, but also because of his military service, and he doesn't know where he is. And then there's a meta narrative in that, because there's a woman writing a book about the whole thing. So he sees himself through the book, and he doesn't know who he is or who the character is in the book. So he loses a sense of himself. In season 4, the flashbacks are totally ancillary. They're just bullshit. They could have made it work, because we could have, okay, they could have gone, look, we've got an indigenous reservation here, as David said, and we've got circles within circles of the corporation, versus the industry, versus people from the outside, versus law enforcement. We could see the way things have phased over time. We could have gone into the mythology of the Inuit. All of that could have been a thing, but instead they just made it about people's trauma and discussing the people's trauma in a way where we don't see, they're not showing us, they're just telling us that this exists. So it's really hard to do these things on here, even when we were talking earlier about intelligence, because of course, when we can't say the words or the terms, it makes it incredibly difficult. If we're in person, it's a lot easier, because we can accurately describe the things, but we can't do that. So it makes it very difficult, but that's the nature of the thing. I guess that's the way it's going to be,
Yeah, which it is frustrating to get have to get creative with language.
I'm so used to it now. Like if I'm talking to somebody in real life, I'm like, oh yeah, I was over there during Big 9, and they're like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I forgot you're not my internet friend. It was this thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not one of the many friends in the chat. But yeah, I agree. I mean, they really, season 4 was a huge missed opportunity. I mean, to basically take all the things you were talking about that they could have gone into this, and then that all just be red herrings. Was it just, just for the sake of like a narrative. And I don't mean like a narrative within the show. I mean, not like a show, like I mean like an outside kind of external narrative. And you've seen other shows, fall prey to this. Like I used to be a huge fan of Law and Order. That was one of my favorite shows. When they brought the series back, it's just pushing a certain narrative. Law and Order SVU used to be a great show, but that show has just become about kind of ramming, a certain political slant down people's throats. It's just like blatant out and out propaganda. And yeah, so I mean, there's been shows that have fallen to that.
Honestly, I only like Law and Order when I watch the American Dad episode about Law and Order, where they go to the convention and they're constantly playing the theme song. Or when I had a friend who was a recurring character on there for a little while, or when I saw Dennis Farina on the street in New York. I told you that story. I was walking to work, and I was like, "Hey, you're Dennis Farina," and he goes, "Hey, guy, that's right. Hey, how you doing there, fella?" I was like, hell yes, we're best friends now.
Did you ever see that movie he did with it was Tom Green, and I can't think of the star. It was called Stealing Harvard. Did you ever see that movie? It was one of those like weird, really weird early 2000s comedies.
Joe Pesci in that? He plays like a bum goes to Harvard. Or
Brendan Fraser. Jason Lee, Tom Green, Leslie Mann, Dennis Farina, Megan Mullally. John C. McGinley was in it. Chris Penn.
No, I never watch anything with Harvard in the title. I only wear my maroon Harvard sweater when I'm driving around down south. What is it, officer? I'm in a tremendous urban rush.
So yeah, I wear my Columbia University T-shirt.
He was part of that whole Yale thing,
Yeah,
probably a closet homosexual who did a lot of cocaine. That whole Yale thing. Where did he hang out? Oh, Nels, Fluties,
Harry's, the New York Yacht Club. He had a yacht?
No, just hung out there.
Apparently, I looked up the New York Yacht Club. Is that a real thing? And actually, apparently, William F. Buckley Jr. was The C in Buckley stands for Central Intelligence Agency. If y'all didn't, if
Well,
y'all
there's
weren't
two
aware.
William Buckleys. There's two William F. Buckleys. There's the one that was firing line,
Yeah,
and he was I think he was CIA. He was like station chief. Howard Hunt mentions him, station chief, Mexico City. And then there was another William F. Buckley who was the guy who was kidnapped and smoked in like Lebanon. There's two different ones, but they're both, it sounds like a CIA name, doesn't it? Hey, Bill Buckley. Hey, how you doing there, fella?
Yeah, it was him. William F. He's the guy that started National Review.
Yeah. There's two of them. And there is a Harvard Yacht Club because my friend was a member of it because there's a UVA Harvard Club also. They share a club in New York, and I'd be getting back from my bar back job at like 5 a.m. I worked in this place called the Cutting Room, which is they got a lot of concerts in now, but yeah, it's called the Cutting Room. I was working 3 jobs at once, and I would go to Crowbar afterwards, right? And but I would get home, and he'd be leaving at 4 a.m. for his job on Wall Street, and he'd be like, "I'll be back later, fellas. Got to stop by the Harvard Club." What the fuck, dude? What are you talking about? He's like, me and the fellas are gonna hang out and have some cocktails. me and Sebastian Gorka are gonna have some gimlets later. Okay.
Remember gin and tonic with Steve Bannon?
Yes, me and Steve. Personally, I told him I don't like him because he went to Benedictine. You know about those Benedictine fellows. Steve Bannon went to Catholic private school in Richmond.
Yeah, because he's from Richmond. Or is he from Virginia Beach? Or is it Richmond?
I don't know, but I know he went to Benedictine, which is not really our rival, but there used to be fights after basketball games with Benedictine.
Nice. Yeah, so I looked up William F. Buckley Jr. He was indeed, he was CIA. He also went to Yale and was a member of Skull and Bones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then he worked as
now, is this firing line National Review William Buckley, or is this the other CIA Buckley? I think this is National Review Buckley.
Yes, this is National Review Buckley. Because
he's the guy that he had those famous debates with, what's the guy's name? Gore Vidal.
Gore Vidal, yep.
Yeah, he's like, tonight on firing line. My name's William F. Buckley, and I'm here to steer the CIA into the sewage system. And I have Gore Vidal. Now tell me, you're a homosexual. Isn't that right? Tell me about that.
Did you ever see the firing line that Jack Kerouac was on?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Oh, he was like totally wasted. That one was rough.
But there is something great about that because he asks him what he believes in, and he says, what about the atomic movement? And he says, I'm only interested in the Adamic movement. And he says, what do you mean? And he says, atom, creation. And he says, well, what do you believe in? Don't you believe in America or something like that? And he says, Jack Kerouac says, I only believe in piety, chastity, and faith. And he says, you're crazy. You're a crazy writer. And you're like, that's why I'm drinking myself to death, because you think I'm crazy, you know. He's like, what do you think about the hippies? And he's like, Jack Kerouac was like, I don't like them. And they all booed him.
Which is funny that William F. Buckley's audience is booing Jack Kerouac for saying he doesn't like hippies.
It's so weird, isn't it? Yeah.
That was bizarre.
What is that? I remember he said, William F. Buckley says, he's got a pen. He says, now, what do you tell me about this beat generation? What do you mean you're beat? You get beat up? And he's like, no, beat. It stands for beat, like Beatitudes. That's why it's spelled that way, from the Beatitudes. And we've been beat down in life. I've been beat down in life, you know. And he says, that's interesting. Maybe if you weren't such a hippie, you wouldn't be beat down so much. And he says, I don't like the hippies. And then they boo him. It's like crazy.
The interesting thing about Kerouac, because Buckley, I think, at least claimed to be Catholic. Maybe he actually was. I don't know. But the thing, I don't know. I mean, people may know this, but the thing with Kerouac is, despite his issues, he actually was Roman Catholic and was very serious about it. Like, he took his faith very, very seriously. And so despite kind of being his personal life being a mess, like, that was something apparently lifelong, like, he was very devoted to it. And
yeah, I got a book on it. Let me find my book on it real quick. Hold on.
Okay. Which, yeah, if y'all, let's see, do we have any Kerouac fans? So, yeah, John Connor says Kerouac is an indeed. Yeah, I've read the first book of his. I wrote was the Dharma Bombs, and that's one of my favorite. I need to reread that. That was one of my favorites. That's really, really just fascinating books. It's like this is just a guy going around, like living life, going on. You know, he's going to like poetry readings. He's just kind of like, you know, drinking in everything that that life has to offer.
Yeah, it's called The Long, Slow Death of Jack Kerouac, about his faith. And, you know, he obviously infused a lot of Buddhism and Eastern mysticism into his, you know, idea of religion. But I think that's essentially because of his, because of his traveling and because he was a vagabond, you know. And there's a great book on that. Visions of Gerard is probably his most Christian book. It's about the death of his little brother, who, you know, he looks at like an angel in the book, and about how that sort of strengthens his faith. But yeah, it's interesting. You know, I mean, also the times, you know, it's not so cut and dry sometimes. But his, I mean, it is, but it isn't, you know. And so it's interesting. I mean, one of the things that Gregory Corso, the poet, said about Jack Kerouac was that he was so sad that he, you know, he wanted to unalive himself, but he couldn't because he was because he considered himself a Christian. So he, you know, did that sort of in a secondary fashion by drinking himself to death, which is very sad. But yeah,
it was very very tragic what happened. And Gary Snyder, there was nothing with the Eastern, like Gary Snyder, I know, was a big influence on him. And Gary Snyder's like full on into all the Eastern mysticism, Buddhist philosophy,
the Dharma
kind
Bombs,
of thing. I was just talking about that when you were grabbing the book, and that's the first Kerouac book I read, and I was like, this is amazing. I mean, just so beautifully written.
I covered that in my new Jack Kerouac City stream early on, a pretty rough one, but I covered the Dharma Bombs. It's one of my favorite books. And I saw Gary Snyder at the Folger Shakespeare Library doing a reading in 1998 in DC, which was a life-changing thing for me. It was very, very, very big, huge, thousands of people in attendance. It was
really
crazy. They had to move it from the Shakespeare Library across the street to a bigger venue, and it was packed. It was packed, and people were. It was crazy because it was a lot like what I read about when Jack Kerouac was there for Howl. You know, people were applauding and like crying and you know, standing ovations in the middle of this thing, which just sounds very corny, you know, with a poetry reading. But you know, I was there, man, and I saw it. It was you know, I was 18 years old. I was 17 at the time. Went there with my friend, and I just think it's pretty wild that my friend and I drove to DC when I was in 11th grade, just the two of us, to go to a poetry reading of Gary Snyder. I was pretty tuned into literature, man.
Yeah.
But Gary Snyder became a Zen Buddhist monk and left America for 10 years, lived in Japan as a Zen monk. So,
have you read his, I know I can't blanking out on the name of the poem. It's the one about, oh gosh, it's my favorite Snyder poem. I can't think of the name of it. It's the one about where he goes into the bar and he has to like hide his hair in his hat and take his earring out.
I've got all of his books in the other room. Turtle Island.
I went into the Maverick Bar. That's the I actually did an analysis of that one for I took a creative writing course in college, and we had to do a poem analysis, and the instructor was like, I like this one. I was like, yeah. So that one, that's a great one.
The one that caused everybody to weep openly was this poem, Magpie's Song. It's a short lyric poem in Turtle Island. He won the Pulitzer for it. And I'd never heard it before when I saw him. It was amazing, though. I met him afterwards. He signed my book.
Was he cool?
Yeah, he was very cool. Yeah, and then I've got all the beat. I've got every beat. You know, that's the way in for a lot of young men, especially. You know, their way into literature is through like Jim Morrison, The Doors, or Beat Generation. So it's natural to go into those things. But I mean, when I go into a thing, I usually go all the way. So I've got all the beat I think I've even got John Clellan Holmes's novel about the Beat Generation Go. I've got all the documentaries. I've got all the DVDs. I've got all the books, even the secondary people involved with them.
Have you read any of Diane DePrima's books?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I read this. I read this book. I actually got it from when I was in college. I got it from my university library. It was a book called Girls Who Wore Black, and it was a series of essays by different academics about women writers in the Beat Generation. Yeah. And an ex-girlfriend of mine who's really into the Beats, and I think I can't remember if she like texted me or something. I said something about Diane DePrima, and she was like, I actually just read her whatever her most famous book was. She was like, that's a really rough, gross book. She's like, I don't know if you would like that one. So I'm like, oh well okay. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'll read it eventually.
Yeah, I've got. Seraphim just mentions Jim Morrison's books up there. I've got Jim Morrison's Wilderness and American Night. Here's one of the original copies of Wilderness right here, Jim Morrison's book. But yeah, it's like, I got a lot of insight on this when I met Robert Pinsky. I talked about in the couple of streams and on my Dante's Inferno stream, because he had just done it. That's my opinion, the best translation of Dante. And I met him. I went for a thing with my AP class to see him read for a teleconference at the public library in 11th grade. And I asked him a question. I wish I could find it in the archives, like on camera somewhere, but I asked him a question about, what he thought about the Beat Generation, and his answer pissed me off at the time, but I later realized the profundity of it, which was, he said, well, there are a lot of labels. I've said this before, but there are a lot of labels for literature. There's the confessional poets, there's the romantics, there's the, Dante Gabriel Rossetti people. There's all these different circles, but really the only two circles are good and bad. And unfortunately with Beat Generation, there's a gigantic nebulous cloud of bad, but there's very few instances of good in that, but the good is very good. But most of it is bad, but you have to make your way through that. You have to make your way through that with that. And I've been to Jack Kerouac's grave in Lowell, Massachusetts. I've seen his original copy of his original manuscript for On the Road on teletype paper. I went to the Beat Hotel in Paris. I've been to Jim Morrison's grave. I've taken literary pilgrimages to all these places and seen all these people. So, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Don't quit your day job.
Some of the Beat stuff, like I mean, Allen Ginsberg was a creeper. He was a member of a certain, he was a member of NAMBLA and was like an outspoken advocate of it. And I did a whole bunch of research on this. A lot of that you can't talk about on here, but he was a really gross, disgusting, vile person. And I never liked, because people would always talk about Howl and all that, and then I tried to read it. I'm like, this sucks. This is terrible. And now
I've seen the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, searching through the streets at dawn, searching for an angry fix. Yeah. Yeah, I've got all Ginsberg stuff, and I've even got his journals to India. Here I've got all of his stuff. But it's interesting because when you read that when you're younger, I didn't even know what that was. The thing you just mentioned, I didn't get that. I was making my way into literature. I didn't. But later on, when you're older, you, especially with some perspective and hindsight, you realize there's a bunch of bullshit, a bunch of shit in there that he writes, and the guy was a creep. It was a literal creeper. But he certainly, his talks about, he was an expert on William Carlos Williams and the mechanics of poetry, which was kind of the stuff that I was interested in. But yeah, he was a creeper, confirmed. I later learned when I lived in New York that he was dead already, but he lived a block away in the East Village. I'm glad I wasn't allowed to come across him. Yeah, it's crazy. He invented flower power. Did you know that he coined that term?
No, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was at the Human Be-In with Timothy Leary. So when Timothy Leary said his, tune in, turn on, drop out thing, it was in San Francisco at the Human Be-In, and you hear bells in the background, ding, ding. And it was Allen Ginsberg, like playing bells. And he had just coined that term. He was also, he also has a bunch of stuff about CIA. He was crowned king of May in the Velvet Revolution in Prague, which is, he's got a lot of stuff sort of CIA and back as far as that goes. But he was probably funded by them as part of the Human Ecology Fund, as part of which is interesting because he thought he was countercultural and all this stuff, but he was probably just furthering their goals. I mean, Burroughs certainly has CIA connections, went to Los Alamos private school and all this stuff in Mexico and with Paul Bowles in Tangier. There's a lot of that. And Jerry and I covered that. Jerry came on for a stream about Burroughs. I've got Burroughs' biography is amazing. It's by Ted Morgan. It's called Literary Outlaw. It's one of the best biographies I've ever read. But yeah, those guys were, I mean, there's a lot of disgusting, it's fucking, bam, punch you in the face. If you saw them, but they're all gone. So,
And what's interesting is that, to kind of like Kerouac, he died pretty early on. He was only like 47 when he died. But then it's like Burroughs. I mean, he was up until, because there are photos of him hanging out with Kurt Cobain. So like he was alive at least up until
Burroughs
the 90s.
died.
I think Ginsberg was also alive up in, I think Gary Snyder, he's like 94 or something, but he's still around. But Gary Snyder was interesting because he wasn't, I think he hung out with those guys, but he was kind of, I'm not a scholar on the guy's life and career or anything, but he seemed to kind of be sort of adjacent to them. Like he wasn't really part of the beat movement in the same way that he's often kind of tied in with them because he was, part of those same circles. But his, like, the way he writes is not, it's not like, the way like Kerouac, for example, and some of the other beat writers. And the thing with Burroughs, like I tried reading Naked Lunch, and
awful.
I was like, this is just filth. Like, this is just disgusting. I didn't even make it into the first chapter. And I was like, no, I'm done. I'm not reading this.
Yeah, it's awful. Lawrence Ferlinghetti was the oldest one of these guys. He was 102 when he died. He died in 2021. He owned City Lights Bookstore. He wrote Coney Island of the Mind, which he won Pulitzer for. But he was more of a, he was the one who facilitated the bookmaking, but he was more of the Gary Snyder type, who was a West Coast beat. And then they had younger guys like Gregory Corso, was another one of these fucking, Skittles people. But Ginsberg and Burroughs both died in 1997. And Gary Snyder's still alive. He's 93. Ferlinghetti I like Ferlinghetti because in City Lights Bookstore, there's a sign that says, books are trees made immortal, which I thought was pretty cool. And then he said,
I like that.
I remember a biography where he was talking about Kerouac, and he has this phrase. He says, now just to continue on this little train, Kerouac was, that was funny. Continue on this little train.
Have you ever been to City Lights?
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. I've been to City Lights. I went there, freshman year of college. I flew out there to meet up with my friend Paul. That's where I discovered Elliott Smith, music of Elliott Smith. And we did a whole bunch of, Beat Generation pilgrimage type thing. Went to Vesuvio Cafe and got a bunch of books at City Lights. Great bookstore. But I never liked City Lights. It's still there, yeah.
Speaking of Elliott Smith, we only got a couple minutes here, but I want to ask, do you buy the official story about Elliott Smith's untimely demise?
No. I remember when Elliott Smith died, I think it was October 21st, 2003. Somebody fact check me on that. See if that's right. Was it October 21st, 2003?
I'm pretty sure it was the 21st, and I think it was either 2003 or 2004. Yeah. I can't remember. I think it was 2003. I think you're right.
Let me check it. Elliott Smith.
Great songwriter.
Yep, I was right. October 21st, 2003. Damn, nice. I'm good. I'm good. Listen, I'm good. Okay.
That's laser precise right there.
I was watching that octopus conspiracy thing with someone, and I said, why does he need to take notes? Why didn't he just remember everything? It's like, because if you're in the meeting with this guy Nichols and he's telling you the whole thing, wouldn't you? Any one of us, I feel like, would be sitting there and we would be like, and he'd be telling us the web, and we would be, it's locked in, right? It's locked in. Hyperthymesia is locked in. But anyway, no, I don't buy that at all. He apparently was stabbed, in the chest, or he did that. That's what the story is, that it was him. But I've got his book. Oh, hold on, let me get this book out. Let's see. Here. This is a book about Elliott Smith. Blow the dust off that. Elliott Smith. It's called Elliott Smith and the Big Nothing. It was a good book on him. I read this 2007. Yeah. I said, very well written biography. Mysterious, haunting, familiar. I was in England the day he died. It's very strange. I remember the day he died because it was very sad for me. I saw Elliott Smith live right before he died at the 930 Club in DC, and on the Figure 8 tour. And I was very, very much, I was from the first, I'll just say this, we're all affected by music and stuff. I'm a very sensitive fella. But when my friend Paul showed me his self-titled CD, and I listened to the song Clementine, it's the first song I ever heard from Elliott Smith, and I immediately knew that it was just for me. It was just for me. And I was very, very, very much into Elliott Smith music. And it sort of captures a lot of things happening in the early 2000s. And then the day he died was very sad for me. It's one of the few times when someone famous dies where you feel it's like that in Norm. I mean, Norm died on my birthday. And I was, when people go through things in life and they say, oh, they'll write it in the YouTube comments, man, this helped me get through this thing. Well, that was the case, with those two things. So I was very much into Elliott Smith, and no, I don't believe the official story of what happened. I think they think she smoked him. He had a schizo, heroin addicted girlfriend, I think, who, but my friend, Paul is friends with his, recording engineer and has been to his house in LA. So yeah, so I hope they don't make a movie about him. That's all I can say.
Oh gosh, I hope not.
Yeah.
Real quick, I'm not going to dox anybody, but we did get one Cash App from Ethan. Thank you, Ethan. Many thanks, much appreciated.
Yeah. Nice, bro.
Means a lot. Yeah, so thank you for the support on that. And I'll pass some of that along to BLA.
Ethan's a big supporter out there. All of our people are big supporters. They're here, right?
Yes.
So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, we got a big live crowd today. So yeah, thank you to everybody. So we got to wrap up.
All right.
But thank you everybody for hanging out. We'll be back with these. I like doing the kind of structured streams, but it's also kind of nice just to chop it up and riff and talk about whatever, more kind of like I guess podcast style. But we do have some structured streams coming, so be on the lookout for those. I guess we got all our anything else you want to mention before we get on? You got a lot of what you got coming up at the top of the stream, but if there's anything else you wanted to mention.
Yeah, every time I look at myself, I think people probably think this is a feather stuck in my beard, but my hair turned white right here. It's not even gray. It's my first gray, but it's totally white.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, it's not milkshake stuck in my beard. My hair turned white right there. Overnight, a little while ago, but yeah, man, thanks for having me. It's been a weird weekend. One of my old good friends passed away, and I just found out about that on Friday, and so rest in peace to you, James. It's strange, it's a fallen world. Everybody who's ever lived died, and we're all going to go that way, but it's crazy when it's somebody your age and one of your friends. And I feel like we were just in 9th grade in a band together just yesterday. I can remember, going to the Ramones concert with him, and we spent a lot of time together. And so I'm sorry to say that he passed away. It's very unfortunate. He also made music. I mean, we were in a punk band together. We were called Purple Stuff. played a bunch of gigs when I was 15 years old, but he went on to make synthwave music and under the name Syntax. And he made a song with the guy College that was on the Drive soundtrack. He was with this guy Droid Bishop. So, and he played gigs in out there in California. He was brilliant musically, and went out there to his new life, and but it's amazing that what's amazing about the internet is that we found each other through me. I was listening to music. Whenever I listen to music, I go into the rabbit holes and I find, who the person is. And I was listening to this song one day 10 years ago, and I went into it, and it said it was him. It was him. And so I reached out to him. I said, dude, this is you. And he was like, yeah. So we, kind of reconnected briefly, but, even though it's been years, I will always have that time together. So, may you rest in peace, James. And also, I got a stream coming up on Faust and on Trauma Novel by a guy who inspired Eyes Wide Shut, Arthur Schnitzler, and a bunch of other stuff coming up. I got to do Michael Clayton for our friend Block Party Vintage right there. Shouts out to Block Party, and a bunch of stuff. I just watched Roadhouse. Maybe I'll do a member stream on Roadhouse coming up.
Oh, that's such a good movie.
They did a remake with Jake Gyllenhaal. And,
I heard that was good. I haven't seen it
Conor
yet.
McGregor. I liked it. I thought it was good. It was just straight up action movie. The plot was sort of secondary. It was whatever, but it was good. It was a good remake. So we'll see how that goes. But thank you for having me. Appreciate you, Matty, and good to see everybody out there. I hope everybody has a good weekend.
Yes, absolutely. Right. Yeah. Thank you all. We'll catch you soon.
Peace.